Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I'm going to walk you through a basic illustration of the Git architecture. Git has what is called a three-tree architecture. That means it has a three-stage process from when the file is created to when it goes into the repository. So the very first process is the working directory. The working directory contains all the files required for your projects, and any files you want to add goes into the working directory. At this stage, while the files are in the working directory, they are not being tracked by Git because they have not been pushed up to the repository. So Git doesn't know, has an idea of them. You can see them on the watch list. At this stage, the files are red, so they'll be showing up as red. But the moment you move them, once you finish, say for example, I finished working on the files in the project, I want them to begin going towards the repository. And the way that works, it goes to the second tier, which is we'll now push it into a staging area using the command git add. So if you use the command git add space dot, it will move all the files that are present in the working directory into what is known as a staging index. While the files are in the staging index, Git has a sight of them. So now they're being watched by Git. So at this stage, the files will be green. They would have turned green. That means Git is watching them. By this stage, they are not yet committed to the repository. So other people cannot see the changes, or they cannot see the files. So for the files to be present in the repository, they have to be pushed to the repository using the git commit. So once the files have been committed, they then go into the repository. At this stage, the staging index is clear. There is no files. There shouldn't be any files in the staging index because they would have all be committed using the git commit command. So once the files are now in the repository, and if it's a repository that is public or is being pushed to GitHub, then other people can see the changes. But until the changes are inside, they've been committed and in the repository, no one else can see and share the files. So, but each time you make modifications to the working directory, the process starts again. That means you use git add to push the files again back to the staging index. Once they're in while the files are in the staging index, you can unstage them. So if you've made a change and you decide you don't want the changes anymore, there's a command to unstage to remove them from the staging index, and then you don't need to commit them. But once they're in the staging index, they are ready to be committed, and once they're committed inside the repository, they become available for others to see. So in a nutshell, that's basically how the Git architecture is structured. Hello and welcome. In this lecture, I'm going to walk you through a simple Git workflow illustration. The workflow process begins with the working directory. So this is actually your project directory that contains all your files. Say for example, we are working on a file and we're going to call it sample text 1, and we're going to make this version 1, which is the original. And we have finished working with the file. We want to push it into the Git repository. What we need to do first is move it into the staging area. So we use the git add command to add the file and move it to the staging area. The file becomes available in the staging area. While the file is in the staging area, you can still remove it. At this stage, it is being tracked by Git. So to move the file from the staging area into the actual Git repository, we need another command called git commit. So we'll commit the file into the repository. The file becomes available inside the repository. So that's the original file. Say, for example, we want to edit the same file. We finish editing. That will now become version number 2. So we'll now add that version that we have just edited. We move that into the staging area. So once that file is in the staging area, again, we do a git commit, and that file becomes available to the repository. So now in the Git repository, we have 2 versions of the file. If for any reason there's a corruption, or once we've updated just remember that the file, the latest commit is always the current, that becomes the current. Say, for example, we updated sample text 2, and that caused a lot of problems, and people complained that things were going wrong. What we have to do, we just have to revert back to sample text 1. So the good thing about Git is that it keeps all the versions, so you can always revert back if there's a problem with any of the updates. So this happens a lot in big environments with large user base. Once there's a major change, if there's any issues, they can always revert back to the previous versions. So that's it for this lecture on the illustration of the Git workflow.